the thing about stress is that stress is like one of the ultimate performance enhancers, period. Stress is good. How do you build a more resilient team that can handle stress better? Well, it's certainly not by taking away stress. How do you become more patient? You put yourself in situations that test your patience. How do you become more resilient to handling stress? You handle stress at high levels. I'm Michael Mogill, founder and CEO of Crisp, the nation's #1 law firm growth company. I've built my business through practice, not theory. Crisp started with just $500 to my name and has grown to over 8 figures in revenue over the last few years, earning a spot on the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing private companies in America. Our approach has been to take everything we've learned about generating massive growth within our own organization and help the country's most ambitious and committed law firm owners do the same for theirs. In each episode of this podcast, I sit down with innovative market leaders from the legal industry and beyond to learn from those who thrive in the face of adversity, challenge the status quo, and define what it means to be a true game changer.
This is Jessica, Head of Coaching Strategy at Crisp, and today we're flipping the script for another special edition episode to get Michael's take on how to trust your team more and delegate effectively, actionable tips to achieve a healthier work-life balance, and more strategies for overcoming burnout in high-stress environments.
Balance is a luxury. I say it's a luxury when you're ambitious. There's going to be all sorts of people that listen to this and are bothered by what I'm saying, and they're saying, that's not true. I believe it can do it all. And in some cases, that is possible. But again, it depends on what stage of the journey you're in, and it also depends on how much time you're wasting.
That's coming up on the Game Changing Attorney podcast. Michael, long time no see.
That's right. I know. It's been a while. I haven't done one of these in a while. The AMMA. I love to be surprised. I love to just whatever you have to ask. I mean, again, it's the AMMA, so people seem to enjoy these. For those of you that are joining the podcast for the first time, I'm sure it's somebody, right? Every time it is somebody. This is the AMMA. Ask Michael Mogill anything. You guys submit the questions, and then we answer said questions. And you never know what the questions are going to be. You can submit them by texting us at 404-531-7691. And then we do a couple other episodes on this podcast. We also do our traditional interview format where we bring on experts from the legal industry and beyond. Obviously, those are one-to-one podcasts. And then we also have our encore editions where we bring back some of our most popular episodes. You get to revisit them on the podcast. But this is the AMMA. This is unfiltered. There are no ads that we run on this podcast. There are no sponsors or anything like that, which you might hear on some other podcasts, but we make sure that is not the case so that we can say whatever we want. Our guests can say whatever they want. We are not beholden to anybody who is paying us money to censor us in some sort of way. So that means you're going to get an authentic answer. You may or may not like that authentic answer, but it will be authentic. And with that, Jessica, let's do this.
All right. So surprise question number 1. So we always do little batch here. So really thinking of this as just overcoming burnout and thinking about high stress environments. So first one, I struggle with delegating tasks because I feel that no one else can handle them as well as I can. This leads to burnout and exhaustion. How can I learn to trust my team more and delegate effectively to prevent burnout?
Well, it sounds like you're already learning, considering you end up burnt out and exhausted. All right. It's like touch the stove. It's hot. Maybe there's another way. And you're saying you struggle with delegation, but you don't delegate, which leads to burnout and exhaustion, which how can you learn to better delegate?
Hamster wheel.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because that cycle could continue, or you could decide to do something differently, right? And knowledge is not power. It's really, behavior change. So it's like, okay, you're going to get some sort of new information and you can decide whether you're going to adjust your behavior, your habits or not. And if you don't adjust those behaviors and habits, then what's the value of the information, right? So there must be a better way. I think when it comes to delegation, many leaders struggle with this. I used to struggle with this for many, many years. And it's this idea that nobody can do anything as well as you can. And in some respects, it's probably true. Let's say you're the founder of your law firm. You've probably, done every single role that could be done in your law firm. Probably care the most because it's your entire livelihood. You've bet it all on this business. You've invested a lot of time and energy and money and et cetera. And if it doesn't work out, there's obviously the financial impact, but there's the time impact and there's the, probably the hit to the ego as well of what's, how that would make you feel. But the reality of it is you're going to grow. And if the organization is going to grow, and if you desire to impact more people, and if you desire to improve your life in some way, you have to learn to delegate. But why don't we delegate? The questions are always like, how can I be a better delegator? So it's not that you're not so much sold on the delegation, it's just you just struggle to do it. And I think this could be for, let's say, one of two reasons. Number one, you do not have confidence in the people you're trying to delegate things to, so that, as a result, you don't delegate. So meaning that if you look around your office and there's a task you'd like to delegate, but you look around and you don't believe anybody has that capability or could do this well, or you believe that by assigning it to them, they're essentially going to turn around some sort of work product or fail to hit some deadline, or that you're going to have to fix it in some way, well, then that's going to affect your confidence in terms of delegating that task. And then number two, I think you may look around and say, well, maybe nobody has time to do anything. Maybe everybody, it's a capacity issue, meaning that, you look around your office and everybody's already spread thin and you don't really have the type of person where you can add something to their plate. So it's either one of two things. Either the person that you want to delegate to doesn't have the capability, so meaning they just don't have the skills and you don't trust that, or they don't have the time, in which case they could have the capabilities, or even worse, maybe they don't have the time nor they have the skills, in which case you have to really wonder, what is the value of this human being in your organization? And it could be one of those two things, or it could also be you. And it probably is you, because it's very easy to say, oh, it's these people, but have you tried to delegate? And it's also this understanding that there are people out there in the world that love to do the things you hate to do. And there's other people in the world that hate to do the things you love to do. So you don't really know how it's going to work unless you try. I think there's a value to someone doing something 90% as good as you, or even 80%. Because I forget the exact quote, Dan Martell has this, in his book, Buy Back Your Time, and he talks about like being able to delegate, something to someone, they doing it 80% as good as you can is 100% awesome. And it doesn't mean that it has to be done perfect, but you have to consider like how much that can increase your capacity by being able to delegate things to other people. They're doing it almost as good as you. As soon as you evolve as a human being, if you're, just developing this delegation capability, you will start to see that a lot of times you're going to delegate things to people who are way better at doing those things than you are. And generally are probably better suited to doing those things. And then as you do this enough times and you expand over a long enough time horizon, you might find that you are not doing anything anymore besides strategy and thinking bigger picture and really like charting the vision for the firm and truly occupying that role as the CEO or the leader of your law firm. Because if you're holding on to everything, well, then you're the production of the firm and you're in the day-to-day of the business, and things can never expand. You can never really focus on working on the business or creating a better future until you learn to delegate. Any thoughts on this, Jessica?
Yes, I think the other thing with delegation is really setting someone up for success, because the other side of that is maybe your YOLO person who's like, I delegated it, it's done, it's off my plate. But did you really set them up for success? Was there proper training? Are there proper checkpoints in place? Are you actually auditing the things? And so making sure that when you delegate, you actually have a plan and you're setting them up for success.
Well, this sounds like a huge pain in the ass. I might as well just do it myself. I got to create a plan. I got to create training. I got to work with somebody. It's like, shit, I would have gotten it done by now.
You're right. But you know what? Once you make this process and you can actually have a system that is repeatable, the beauty of that is now multiple people can do that. And you are actually building out a full table of delegates and not just one person.
So you're telling me that by creating a process around this and actually laying out the groundwork for this, that you can delegate this task multiple times without having to train multiple times.
It's amazing.
It doesn't just save you the time one time, right? Maybe it's a little more work up front, but maybe you're going to realize you're going to have to delegate that type of task over and over and over again. Or maybe it's something you want to get off your plate entirely, and you want to do it in a way where delegated to this one person, and then perhaps as the organization grows, let's say that person leaves the organization, you still have everything documented so you could assign it to somebody else without having to do retraining. And also as that person, let's say they don't leave the organization, they grow within the organization and they're in a different role, that task is able to continue to be done.
Absolutely. I think that's the beauty of all of this. And many of you who've listened or know me, like I ran payroll from the hospital with our first child. And the beauty of all of this now, I don't even know how to run payroll anymore. Like literally can't.
Yeah.
But that's the power of delegation. And now there are multiple other people who can.
Agreed. If you find yourself burnt out and exhausted, at the very least, acknowledge that there must be a better way. And what do you have to lose? Because at least you know what's going to happen if you don't delegate.
Exactly. You're going to repeat.
That's right.
All right. Moving on to question number 2. As a law firm owner, I find it difficult to maintain a healthy work-life balance, which is leading to burnout. What are some actionable tips for achieving a better balance between my professional and personal life?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Balance.
This is a good one. Well, here's the thing. I wish I had more context, because the answer to this, at least my answer to this, and this being the AMMA, So a lot of these are my answer to this.
Unfiltered.
Is it depends what stage you're in. It depends what stage of the journey you're in. So I'll give an example. It's like, all right, well, if you've been, let's say, growing your firm for 30 plus years and you've got an amazing leadership team and the firm has predictable revenue and you've got an amazing client base, you're making a great impact in your community, you've established a strong brand, you have systems and processes established, you have key metrics and KPIs, you've got great data, and you're still finding yourself struggling with work-life balance, then I have got an answer for that. That's a you problem. Alternatively, let's say you don't have any of those things and you don't have a great support team, you don't have processes in place, and you don't really have systems in the business, and you're trying to grow the firm right now, and maybe you're at a place where you're at 7 figures in revenue, maybe you're low 8 figures in revenue, maybe very early on you're at 6 figures in revenue, trying to get to 7 figures. Why do you feel entitled to work-life balance? I mean, look, here's a simple way to get work-life balance. I mean, you own the business. It is your law firm. You decide what time you come in, and you decide what time you leave, and you decide how many clients you take on, and you decide how many people you hire, and you decide what investments you're going to make. And if you want to work 20 hours a week, and that works for the life that you want and the lifestyle that you want, you are satisfied, then you can do that. But the problem is, I think where the question arises is that I want it all, and I also want the balance. So meaning that I want a law firm that's going to be, growing and making a huge impact in our community. And I want to be able to bring in a lot of profit, and I want to be able to have an awesome life. And I don't want to work more than 40 hours a week. And it doesn't work that way. Now, I'd love it to sell you some fake ass course about how you can, have some 5-step model to solving this problem overnight, but I'd just be bullshitting you. And if there's anybody out there you see online that tells you there's a quick multi-step process to achieving said result, they're just trying to sell you something. The reality of it is that very early on in the journey, there is no balance. And if you're seeking balance, then maybe this is not for you. Maybe you shouldn't have started a business. Go work at a law firm. And then you can work for somebody else's vision, and as a result, probably achieve greater balance because you don't have to carry the same amount of risk and stress. But you decided to bet on yourself, and you decided to start your own business. And unless you are willing to endure a significant period of imbalance, well, then you never get to the balance. Balance is a luxury. Now, and again, I say it's a luxury when you're ambitious. There's going to be all sorts of people that listen to this and they're bothered by what I'm saying, and they're saying, that's not true. There's nothing wrong with being able to get 8 hours of sleep a night, and then, I want to be able to exercise, and I want to be healthy, and I want to spend time with my family, and I want to make sure the business is growing, and I believe it can do it all. And in some cases, that is possible. But again, it depends on what stage of the journey you're in, and it also depends on how much time you're wasting and you're bullshitting, because how much time you spend watching Netflix, and how much time you spend moseying around, and how intentional are you, right? And what are you doing on the weekends? Because if you're trying to have it all before you have it all, well, then that's going to be very, very difficult. So again, my answer is really just if you're early on in that journey, let's say you're at 6 figures in revenue, certainly, and maybe 7 figures in revenue, probably certainly too, maybe early 8 figures in revenue, until you've solved this stuff and figured this stuff out, you can decide again to have the balance. You choose. It's your life. It's your business. But there's going to be a trade-off there in terms of building this greater future that you want to build. So you have to decide what it is that you really, really want. And if you want to scale things down, well, then you also have to scale down your ambitions, and you have to scale down what the lifestyle that you want. It's interesting when you think about like financial freedom. And the definition of financial freedom is essentially when whatever you earn passively is exceeding whatever your burn rate is. Like essentially, you're earning more passively than what it is required in your life, in terms of your expenses and the lifestyle you want to live. And this can be different things to different people. For some people, they want to be able to live large and have an amazing life, take all the vacations they want to be able to take. And, in their mind, that is an amazing life. And they want to be, just able to eat at the nicest restaurants. And, okay, I want to be able to spend $1 million a year. Well, then that person requires $25 million, put away so that, let's say at a 4% withdrawal rate, that can earn $1 million a year in passive income. And then for them, that is their number of financial freedom. Then you have other people that don't require any of those things and say, look, I don't want any of that stuff. I can live off 50 grand a year, right? And they don't need the big house. They don't need the big car. They don't need the, the luxurious meals. They don't need the luxurious trips. That is just not what they want. So because their goals are different, their financial freedom number is going to be different too. And again, both of these people, these examples, both of them can have financial freedom. So this leads us back to this business example of work-life balance. It's you saying like, well, what is the work and the life that you want? And then you strike whatever that balance is. So meaning that if you're unwilling to make the trade-off of saying that, okay, well, I want to have this type of lifestyle and I want to be able to live this sort of life. For me, you say it is necessary. As a result, the business has to be able to continue to grow at this pace, and it has to be able to generate this amount of profits. This is the amount that I can take home in either salary or distributions or, or however it is that you compensate yourself. And that's going to require a certain, level of effort and energy and putting systems and structure in place and a certain level of investment in the firm. And if alternatively you say, you know what, I think the balance right now is more important to me than the growth of the firm, well, then you can choose to dedicate your time that way. It's really you being clear on what you want.
Yeah. And then owning the outcome.
That's right.
Okay. To close us out with question number 3 today. So my team often mirrors my stress levels, which creates a high stress environment for everyone. How can I build a more resilient team that can handle stress better and support each other during challenging times?
Oh, this is a good one. How can I build a more resilient team to handle stress better? Well, it's interesting. When did stress become such a bad thing? It's fascinating because I think sometimes there's a lot of people who associate stress as a negative. Like, I can't be stressed. The minute I feel stress, I must, do away with this feeling. I can only be happy, right? I can only be, just elated and ecstatic. And it's like, that when they feel that tingling of discomfort and potential stress, they say, ooh, this is not good. I need to calm down. Well, stress, especially stress amongst teams, is not a bad thing. Too much stress can be debilitating and it can be, create paralysis, but stress is one of the greatest drivers of performance and results. It's like if you weren't stressed, if you didn't have, let's say, a deadline, would you ever get anything done? It's like, this is the notion of like, well, what if you can live forever? The downside of that, there's a lot of upside, right? Like you could be there, your kids, your grandkids, et cetera. But the downside is why would you ever get out of bed? Because you could always put things off until tomorrow, right? There'd be no deadlines. If you just knew you're going to live forever, well, I'll just do this 100 years from now, right? But the thing about stress is that stress is like one of the ultimate performance enhancers, period. It's like the driver of results. Stress is good. How do you build a more resilient team that can handle stress better? Well, it's certainly not by taking away stress. You don't make someone more resilient by challenging them less. It's like, how do you become more patient? You put yourself in situations that test your patience. Or how do you become more resilient to handling stress? You handle stress at high levels and you adapt and you overcome. So again, I think it is the mindset that we approach this with in terms of like the value of stress, because there's a lot of organizations that love to work under pressure and they thrive in those environments. When they look back, years later, they say those were the moments that we came together as a team. Those are the moments that the bonds were formed. Those are the moments that we really got to know one another and we built trust and we developed new skills and we developed capabilities and we did our best work. And then there's another subset of people that once they felt that little discomfort were unwilling to stress themselves and they said, this is not good. I don't like it. And then there's the leaders that accommodated that by saying, well, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Are you all right? Can we help you? You're stressed? Come, step into the meditation room, okay? Do you want to do some yoga? Do you want a hug? How can I help you? I don't want you to have this feeling, this stress that you feel. And then you just enabled that bullshit. So these people did not become resilient. And then they experienced other moments in their lives and their careers where they were stressed and they found themselves without the skills or the capabilities to be able to handle said stress. So it was overwhelming, right? The other thing to keep in mind is that what is stressful to one person may not be stressful to another person, and there's different levels, right? Just like think about yourself as a business owner, right? There's the things that used to stress you out at the beginning that probably wouldn't even like raise your heart rate today. And then there's the things that stress you out today that probably would have killed you back in the day. Like, whoa, that's a lot, right? Sometimes the complexity is the stress. Sometimes having, multiple people that you're having to, you basically intake a lot of information from multiple sources and you're having to have a lot of people that you're accountable to. And the weight of that is stressful. But I will say, when I think about all this, it's like, I look at stress as good. Like, I think, some of the best trial lawyers that we've had on the podcast, they're stressed when they're preparing for trial. And they've done this 1,000 times. And they're stressed when they're walking into the courtroom. And it's because they want to do a good job. And they really want to represent their clients well. And they want to show up and they want to be prepared. And they know that if they come in one day and they're not feeling that stress, something's wrong and something's off. So I would change your attitude towards stress first and foremost. And then really start to gauge in terms of like, well, are we putting too many pounds of stress on somebody right out of the gate, right? It's like, so you start working out and exercising. Someone's never been in the gym before. You're not going to tell them go lift 500 pounds. You say, hey man, start with the 10s. Start with the 20s. We're going to build up to this. But the way to become more resilient is to constantly add more weight on the barbell. And it's becoming more stressed and more stressed and more stressed and more stressed, but allowing people to be able to adapt and be able to become that. That's what resilience is. So you want to become more patient, put yourself in situations to test your patience. If you want to become more resilient when it comes to stress, put yourself in more situations that stress you, make you uncomfortable, and adapt and overcome. And that's the way to do it.
And one thing I would add to that is like knowing who you are and the culture that you want. Because like in interviews or things like that, I'm very, very clear that CRISP is not for everyone. And so getting that super clear from the very start with whoever it is that you're adding to your team.
Yeah. And there's a whole other side of it. I guess this other question of I guess the earlier part of the question of like, if I'm stressed, is my team going to be stressed? Yeah, probably. I mean, they're going to be a reflection of you. So you don't want to be coming around, like showing up just all stressed the hell out over nothing. If the world was ending, truly ending, then that would make sense to be stressed. If it's Tuesday in the office and, you had a flat tire, you coming in being all stressed out about that is probably not the right signal. So it starts with managing yourself. But that being said, when you're doing difficult work and you're doing purposeful work and it is challenging, then yeah, it is stressful. It's a part of it.
Part of it. Part of the journey. That's
right.
All we got today.
All right, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. You've been listening to the Game Changing Attorney podcast with Michael Mogill. If you found this episode valuable, here are 3 free ways that we can help you grow your law firm. Number 1, download the first chapter of Michael's book absolutely free at gamechangingattorney.com. Number 2, you can shoot Michael a text at 404-531-7691 and ask him any question you'd like. You might just hear the answer on the next episode. And finally, number 3, if you can leave this podcast a 5-star review, it will help us gain access to more influential thought leaders and bring their lessons learned here to you. For more information on this episode, see the show notes in your podcast app or visit legalpodcast.com.